What's your favorite nerdy joke? A wife asks her husband, who is a software engineer, could you please go shopping for me and buy 1 carton of milk? And if they have eggs, get 6. A short time later the husband comes back with 6 cartons of milk. The wife asks him, why the hell did he buy 6 cartons of milk? They had eggs. A pizza with depth and radius Z has a volume of pi ZZA. I love this. Some helium floats into a bar. The bartender says sorry, we don't serve noble gases here. The helium doesn't react. A superconductor walks into a bar. The bartender says we don't serve your kind here. The superconductor leaves without any resistance. Bertrand Russell comes out of the hospital, where his wife has just given birth. A journalist comes up to him and excitedly asks, is it a girl or a boy? Bertrand Russell replies, yes, apostrophe. I must say it is really inconvenient sometimes that English lacks a word to concisely express exclusive or, I guess on the plus side we get to enjoy outstanding jokes like this. So Heisenberg goes to a marriage counselor. He says, I'm having problems pleasing my wife. Every time I get up any momentum, she says I've got the position wrong. Every time I manage to get into position, I can't get any momentum going. A superconductor walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender tells him to get the duck out. The superconductor puts up no resistance. Einstein, Newton and Pascal decide to play hide and seek. Einstein is it. Closes his eyes. Counts to 10 then opens them. Pascal is nowhere to be seen. Newton is sitting right in front of Einstein, with a piece of chalk in his hand. He's sitting in a box drawn on the ground. A meter to a side. Einstein says Newton, you're terrible. I found you. Newton says no. Eenie, you found 1 Newton per square meter. You found Pascal. What do a neutrino and I have in common? We are both constantly penetrating your mom. There is a physicist, a biologist and a mathematician standing in front of a house. They see 1 man enter and 2 men leave. The physicist says, well, there is obviously an unknown variable. The biologist says, the man must have multiplied. The mathematician then looks at them both and says, I don't know how it happened, but if 1 more person enters the house it will be empty. Apostrophe. What's an anagram of Banach-Tarski? Banach-Tarski. Your mama's so fat. The probability of her being in an arbitrary point in a room is 1. Yo mama's so fat. She sat on a binary tree and flattened it into a linked list in 1 time. A mathematician and an engineer agree to a psychological experiment. The mathematician is put in a chair in a large empty room and a beautiful naked woman is placed on a bed at the other end of the room. The psychologist explains, you are to remain in your chair. Every 5 minutes, I will move your chair to a position halfway between its current location and the woman on the bed. The mathematician looks at the psychologist in disgust. What? I'm not going to go through all this. You know I'll never reach the bed. And he gets up and storms out. The psychologist makes a note on his clipboard and ushers the engineer in. He explains the situation, and the engineer's eyes light up. The psychologist is a bit confused. Don't you realize that you'll never reach her? The engineer Smillicent replied, of course, but I'll get close enough for all practical purposes. Q. What do you get when you cross a mountain climber and a mosquito? A. Nothing. You can't cross a scalar and a vector. Q. How many Microsoft engineers does it take to change a light bulb? A. None. They just change the standard to darkness. So this bite walks into a bar, looks at the bartender and says, I need a drink. No. Make it a double. Bartender pours the drink, looks up and says, something wrong? Bite says, yeah. Parity error. Bartender says, yeah. I thought you looked a bit off. Apostrophe. Why did the bear dissolve in water? It was a polar bear. A polar bear is just a Cartesian bear after a coordinate transform. So, this seer guru walks into a bar and grill, tavern, pub, public house. I've always seen this degenerate further, with a sleazier seer guy, bar and grill, tavern, pub, public house, sex, porn, XXX. A man is on his first visit to Boston, and he wants to try some of that delicious New England seafood that headlong heard about. So he gets into a cab and asks the driver, "Can you take me to where I can get scrod?" The driver replies, "I've heard that question 1,000 times, but never in the perfect subjunctive." This is probably the only joke I laughed at in the thread. Mainly because it's an English joke, rather than one involving maths or science, which appears to be Reddit's forte. We'll definitely be using this one. Thanks. Q. Two cats are sitting on the couch. Which one falls off first? /rap. The one with the lowest. /r. Two scientists are in a hot air balloon. After about 2 hours of floating they lose track of where they are. About 15 minutes later they see a hiker, so they shout, "Hey, where are we?" After about 10 minutes the hiker yells back in a balloon. The first scientist turns to the second and says, "Great, the one guy we run into is a mathematician. How do you know that?" replies the second scientist. 1. Because he took forever to answer. 2. He was 100% right. And 3. His answer was completely useless. Not a joke, but this happened last year. Had some friends over and was baking a pie. Because well, pie is delicious. I was using a square dish because it was all I had. When I was taking it out of the oven and friend asked, "What's that?" I said, "It's an apple pie." The friend said, "But pies are round." To which I replied, "No, pie are square." Descartes is sitting at a bar. The bartender comes over and asks, "Can I get you a drink?" To which Descartes replies, "I think not," and promptly disappears. How did the mathematician solve his constipation? He worked it out with a pencil. My god. That is disgusting. Upvote. I made one up the other day. A friend of mine informed me that her doctor said she's not getting enough potassium. I replied, "K." I had to explain the joke. So I guess it wasn't funny, but I remarked that it had to have been the geekiest joke I've ever come up with on the spur of the moment. Why don't we go back to my place, and I'll show you the exponential growth of my natural log. Sartor walks into a coffee house. The waitress asks if he'd like a cup. Sartor says, "I'll have a coffee with sugar but no cream." The waitress comes back minutes later and says, "Sorry sir, we're all out of cream. How about with no milk?" Carl Sagan walks into an apple pie shop. The owner looks at him and says, "Get out." Super Collider? I hardly even know her. It works with pretty much everything in a grad student's lab. Helium doer, polarizer, laser. People keep telling me it gets old fast, but I keep saying it, and I keep laughing. A physics professor and his assistant are working on liberating negatively charged hydroxyl ions, when all of a sudden, the assistant says, "Wait, professor, what if the salicylic acids do not accept the hydroxyl ions?" And the professor responds, "That's no hydroxyl ion, that's my wife." A radioactive element walks into a bar. Everyone dies. I don't know how much of a joke this is, but more of a rhyme. Still geeky. Johnny was a chemist. Johnny is no more. What Johnny thought was H2O was H2SO4. A checksum walks into a bar. The bartender says, "What's wrong?" The checksum says, "Parity error." Bartender says, "Thought you looked a bit off." Apostrophe. A physicist goes to an ice cream parlor every week and orders an ice cream for himself and offers an ice cream for the empty stool sitting next to him. This goes on for a while until the owner asks him what he is doing. The man said, "Well, I'm a physicist and quantum mechanics teaches us that it is possible for the matter above this stool to spontaneously turn into a beautiful woman who might accept my offer and fall in love with me." The owner says, "Well, there are a lot of single beautiful women come in here every day. So why don't you buy an ice cream for one of them and they might fall in love with you?" And the physicist says, "Yeah, But what are the odds of that happening? Werner Heisenberg, Kurt Gödel and Noam Chomsky walk into a bar. Heisenberg looks around the bar and says, "Because there are 3 of us, and because this is a bar, it must be a joke." But the question remains, is it funny or not? And Gödel thinks for a moment and says, "Well, because we're inside the joke, we can't tell whether it's funny. We'd have to be outside looking at it." And Chomsky looks at both of them and says, "Of course it's funny. You're just telling it wrong." Apostrophe. 2 atoms are walking along. First atom, "I think I've lost an electron." Second atom, "Really? An electron? Are you sure?" First atom, "Yeah. I'm positive." What do you call a wheel made of iron? A Ferris wheel. Ferris wheel, and it would need to contain iron. My digital parrot has started to talk. Pieces of 7. Pieces of 7. It's a parity error. So a caveman goes in to see the psychiatrist because of problems he's been having at his workplace. The psychiatrist asks him, "What kind of problems have you been having?" The caveman replies, "I'm starting to feel a bit inferior to my coworkers. They've all started standing up a bit straighter. They've all gotten noticeably less hairy, and their brow ridges have all but disappeared. This is odd," says the psychiatrist. "I can see how you might be having these feelings. Is there any explanation as to why they might be undergoing these changes and you aren't?" "Not that I can think of," the caveman replied glumly. "Well, you all work together, so that can't be it. Do they live in a different town, or eat different food?" "No, we all live over in Morgantown, and we eat together quite often. So I don't think that's it," said the caveman. "How about getting to work? Do you all ride together?" asks the psychiatrist. "Come to think of it, they all ride together. But I get a ride with my friend, who comes in from Hamilton. Do you think that could be the problem?" "I think we've got it. As long as you commute with the Hamiltonian, you're never going to evolve." Apostrophe. Various scientists were invited to a ball. Here are their replies. Ampere was worried he wasn't current. Audubon said he'd have to wing it. Boyle said he was under too much pressure. Darwin waited to see what evolved. Descartes said he'd think about it. Drive. Jekyll declined. He hadn't been feeling himself lately. Edison thought it would be illuminating. Einstein thought it would be relatively easy to attend. Gauss was asked to attend because of his magnetic personality. Hawking tried to string enough time together to make space in his schedule. Heisenberg was uncertain that he could make it. Hertz said in the future he planned to attend with greater frequency. Mendel said he'd put some things together and see what came out. Morse's reply, "I'll be there on the dot. Can't stop now. Must dash." Newton planned to drop in. Ohm resisted the idea. Pavlov was drooling at the thought. Pierre and Marie Curie were radiating enthusiasm. Schrödinger had to take his cat to the vet. Or did he? Stevenson thought the whole idea was loco. Volta was electrified. And Archimedes buoyant at the thought. Watt reckoned it would be a good way to let off steam. Wilbur Wright accepted, provided he and Orville could get a flight. Edit. Spelling. Thanks Roberts. Only works out loud. Q. According to Freud. What comes between fear and 6? A. F and F. What's Super Mario's favorite fabric? A. Denim. 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 To the tune of the Underworld theme. Q. How many Freudian psychoanalysts does it take to screw in a light bulb? A. 2. One to screw in the light bulb and the other to hold the penis, oh I mean ladder. A guy walks into a bar and sits down. The bartender asks him if he can get him a drink. The guy replies, no, I want 10 drinks. The bartender exclaims, my that's an order of magnitude. Knock knock, who's there? Control freak. Now you say control freak who? Gödel, Chomsky, and Heisenberg walk into a bar. Heisenberg says, given that the 3 of us are here together in a bar, this must be a joke, but I cannot tell whether it is funny. Gödel replies, we are inside the joke, so it is impossible for us to tell whether or not it is funny. You'd have to be outside looking in. And Chomsky shakes his head and says, of course it's funny, you're just telling it wrong. A neutron walks into a bar and orders a beer. The neutron asks the bartender how much he owes for the beer. The bartender replies, for you. No charge. Q. What is Beethoven's favorite fruit? A. Banana. Why did the chicken cross the Mobius strip to get to the same side? What is the contour integral around Western Europe? 0. Because all the poles are located in Eastern Europe. Follow up. Actually, there are poles in Western Europe, but they are all removable. A physicist that has spent his career studying string theory is caught by his wife while he was having sex with another woman. He turns around and says, "Relax, honey. I can explain everything." Apostrophe. With reference to dry cleaning, I don't care for perchloroethylene, and I don't like glycol ether. Mushroom walks into a bar. Bartender says, "We don't serve mushrooms here." Mushroom says, "Oh come on. I'm a fungi." Apostrophe. Mathematician, physicist, engineer walking through a field come upon a farmer. The farmer asks what is the best way to construct a fence that will contain his livestock, i.e., most area for least perimeter. The physicist does some calculus and concludes that the best way to do this is a square fence. The engineer looks at him and laughs. "No, the best way is a circle." The physicist concedes, and they start building the fence. The mathematician just sits there for a while and eventually stands up, puts a small piece around himself, and says, "I declare myself to be outside." Also, a physicist, an engineer, and a mathematician are given the job of moving a box of ball bearings from one table to another on the opposite side of a room. The physicist creates a ramp between the two tables and imparts just enough kinetic energy to move each ball to the new table. The engineer grabs the box and tries hauling it over to the new table, but it's too heavy. About halfway across he drops the box. He spends the next hour collecting ball bearings from the floor and putting them on the new table. The mathematician, having observed the previous two, pushes his box off the table onto the floor and says, "I have reduced the problem to a previously solved one." Apostrophe. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.